Hey everybody, brief content warning before we start the episode. This episode of Veronica Mars ends up dealing with some pretty heavy stuff around sexual assault. So we kind of talk about that starting around the 15-minute mark and kind of intersperse throughout the episode. But otherwise, enjoy. Hello and welcome in, all you O9ers, PCHers, junior private detectives, Hearst College whatevers, Greek system sororites and fraternites, and famous guest stars to Life on Mars, the Veronica Mars Rewatch podcast. We go through episode by episode. I'm Brenton.
And I'm Emily, and I'm a recovering sorority girl.
Sororinite, as I called you.
Sororite?
Yep. Season 3, episode 8, Lord of the Pies.
I just felt like I needed to put that confession out there for you. I too joined a cult before. Not like a life or death cult, just like a groupthink cult.
Yeah, I don't think you are as horrible. You were not as horrible as these people.
No, thank you.
No.
I happen to appreciate that I was not that bad.
There were rumors of stuff like this, but, never founded.
And never about me.
Yeah. Before thoughts on the episode, I mentioned famous guest stars. So our famous, the famous guest star for this week, outside, of course, everybody's thinking of the guy from The Nanny. Obviously.
What's his name?
It is Michael Charles Roman.
Got
right?
it.
I think that's right. No.
What's his name on The Nanny?
That's a different one. Oh my God, he's a lord. Charles Shaughnessy. Lord Charles Shaughnessy. He was on Days of Our Lives before that, and then The Nanny. How did he become a lord? The Right Honorable. Interesting. I did not look into this for him, because instead I'm actually more concerned with Selma Rose Hearst.
But now don't we need to learn more about lordship? Where's he a lord of?
Okay, well, we'll go into his arms section.
Just real quick, we need to take a detour into this because I'm going to think about it until,
A coat of arms of... Oh, my God, I don't understand any of this.
It's Coronation Day?
I couldn't tell you. Let's see.
Does it
maybe
say
under career?
Lord of the Flies?
This says the Lord.
Okay, I'll look into that while you tell us about.
It just says the Right Honorable Lord Shaughnessy. Yeah, couldn't tell you. This is very confusing when I looked at the arms section on Wikipedia. But what I wanted to actually talk about is our guest star who was playing Selma Rose Hearst, our, quote unquote missing woman throughout this episode, was played by Patty Hearst. So, do you know who Patty Hearst is?
Not really.
Okay. Prepare to have your mind blown. So, she is the... excuse me, the granddaughter of William Randolph Hearst, who was a, publishing empire, started in 1887, who was, his papers were all about yellow journalism, so super sensational stuff, but made a shit ton of money. So when she was 19, attending University of Berkeley, she was kidnapped for a year by a left-wing political group called the Symbionese Liberation Army, where she was, as the story goes, brainwashed, and then joined them and even participated in a bank robbery. And she was kidnapped for a fucking year. Yeah. Crazy. So this was in 74 to 75.
Why do I not know this?
I know. This is something. So looking at the production stuff on this, this was an idea that they had kind of written on their board in the writer's room of oh, what if we had quote unquote someone who was kidnapped, and then we got Patty Hearst to play it. Wouldn't that be crazy? So it was obviously a big story at the time because it's this huge publishing the granddaughter of a huge publishing magnate, got kidnapped. And then, so eventually they hired her on through her agent for the show.
Okay.
But she didn't know about it. So she found out because Rob Thomas was giving in an interview and mentioned that she was going to be in an episode. And then she was kind of like, you going to tell me about this?
That's
like, to
so
her agent.
Fucking weird.
Yeah. And she was kind of like, I don't know about playing something like too close to my
life.
my life story. But there's like, she's like, oh, okay, there's like enough differences. And the way the plot goes is, she's not actually kidnapped or anything. And not really like an actual similar person at all. But yeah, a real crazy harrowing story about that. So I was like, oh, maybe I'll do this for our other podcast, but really though, where we talk about cool things in history we didn't know about and conspiracy theories and things.
Yeah.
But I was like looking it up because I like to look up the guest stars, but damn.
Yeah.
Some shit.
You'll have to do but really though on that because I know nothing about this.
Yeah, I like to dig in more. This is all kind of surface level reading. Like I said, the story goes brainwashing, but she also participated. They released a tape where she's like, yes, I joined them.
Interesting.
Yeah. So, and then, like I said, participated in bank robbery.
Wow.
Yeah. Gnarly.
I couldn't imagine. I mean, obviously. It's crazy.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Mm-hmm. Do you want to get in the episode?
Sure. So we start with a Frisbee player or two Frisbee players. So there's some nerds are out on the grass.
Well, I mean, you can't frizz for one.
I can't frizz for any.
Okay. I said we were going to get into the episode. Now I'm already getting into a tangent.
Uh-huh.
At University of Oregon when I was visiting, my cousin who went up there, and I was like, oh, maybe I'll go here. One of his roommates was on the Ultimate Frisbee team, and they also got access to like the special building and privileges that other
athletics teams.
Yeah, because their Ultimate Frisbee team was so highly regarded.
That's so funny.
Yeah.
What do you? Yeah, I know a lot of people that played disc golf in the city, which is different than Ultimate.
Mm-hmm.
But then I also, when I was in high school, I knew a lot of kids that did Ultimate, and then they'd try to get me to go play with them, and I was like, I'm not good at this.
Yeah, I'm awful at Frisbee. Just in general, just tossing it back and forth, where it's a lot of like chasing it on the ground.
It feels like a lot of pressure.
Mm-hmm.
And there's rules that I don't understand.
When we were in that like game league where they like had different games that you played every week with like once we graduated from college, I remember playing Ultimate Frisbee, and we just got like absolutely creamed by the other team, and like they were making amazing plays with Frisbees, and I'm like, I can't do this. Like this guy is like
they obviously do this.
Yeah, he's like throwing a pass into the end zone. This guy's like a quarterback and wide receiver is what they have going on here with the Frisbee.
Yeah, it's a lot. But anyway, these kids are just practicing. And a player runs and then he trips over something, and it's a man passed out on the grass in his undies, and it's Chip Diller, the president of the Pie Sigs.
Can't help but feel a little schadenfreude here.
Mm-hmm. Then we cut over to the newspaper, and Veronica's been called in by the new editor. It's a guy. And she's asked to go to a reception of the board to photograph the famous owner / alumni / woman who donated to Hearst College, named what is it?
You're talking Patty Hearst, Selma Rose Hearst.
Thelma Rose Hearst.
Selma.
I wrote Thelma in all of my notes.
So to be fair to you and the listeners, you had asked me for clarification when we were watching the episode, and then just like, I already wrote Thelma. Like, I'm just gonna keep going.
Yes, I did. I wrote Thelma. So it is Thelma now. She is Thelma.
Thelma is she.
Thelma is she. So Veronica goes home to go get ready for the event. She's hanging out with Dad, etc. Getting ready. There's a knock at the door. It's Logan. He's like, hey, I worry about you, which is fair. He's like, you didn't call me back when I call you. And she's like, oh no, I'm on my way to this thing that I have to go photograph for. And he's like, I want you to stay out of this Hearst rape case thing because obviously they know who you are and they're attacking you, which seems like the opposite reason to stay out of it. Like you're already targeted.
And exactly. Yeah, already targeted. And like you mentioned when we were watching it, it's just like, know your audience.
Yeah, who else is going to solve the issue then?
Yeah, she's not going to stop. So, hey, buddy, the name of the show is Veronica Mars. It's about time you got behind her.
So she's like, no, stop it. And he's like, I just worry about you. Like, could you just possibly listen to me for once? And they get a little heated. Some words are thrown. And Dad comes out and he yells at Logan for yelling. Mm-hmm. And Veronica's like, don't get mad at him. He's just trying to protect me. But also, Logan, don't tell my dad about the hair shaving because he doesn't know. He thinks I just got roofied at the cafeteria.
Right. And he's just like, maybe you should loop him in. And it's like, yeah.
Yeah, you probably should tell your dad.
Do you remember like all those other times in past seasons when you're like, hey, wouldn't this was solved when like my dad and I like were simpatico?
When we worked together.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Unfortunately, communication is not like a key skill in the Mars family.
Yeah, it does not seem that way.
It's really interesting because they work in a people industry. You'd think they'd be better at it.
And they talk all the time.
Yeah, but about nothing.
Yeah.
So then Veronica goes to the event. She gets a picture of the dean and the board person, Thelma Rose Hearst. Thelma Hearst Rose?
Thelma Rose Hearst.
Selma. The dean then goes to announce her. He's like, I'm welcoming this person up on the stage. And they turn around and Selma's gone.
Mm-hmm.
And everyone's like, where'd she go?
Did she drive over the cliff with her good friend Louise?
Maybe that's why I was like, oh, it's a missing woman. It's Thelma. Though I did not remember this episode at all going into it, having watched this before.
Yeah, no. And now having, I'll save that for later. I'm not surprised.
So then they call the sheriff and Lamb comes and he's like, I don't think there was foul play. I think it's just a flighty woman being flighty. It's like she was in the room and then she disappeared. It's not like she didn't show up for the event.
Uh-huh. Yeah, that'd make more sense. Yeah, because she has a history of like loud protesting and doing stuff like that. That it seemed to me like a like privileged person and rich person as a young person going over the top, but I can understand everybody being like, this person bringing shame on her family. But then she agrees with them, and it's like, okay, I think you took the wrong lessons up from the press you got.
Yeah. Then the dean is like, hey, Veronica, will you look into this? Because obviously our sheriff department sucks. And she's like, yes. So then
I did a tip of the cap and winked at Emily, and I'm like, oh, this is a audio podcast.
I thought you were just flirting with me.
Yep. Mm-hmm. It's not professional of me. I'm sorry.
It's okay. We share a bed, so I don't feel weird about it.
Okay, cool.
But, if you flirted with someone else, I'd have a problem.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Understand.
Especially because who are you around? Where'd they come from?
Damn right. Yeah, we got a bigger issue.
But so then Veronica's like, hey, Dad, I'm going to bring the dean home. So get your hand out of your pants. I remember it being a really weird throwaway line.
Yeah. And something like that.
I was like, oh, we talk about that, but we don't talk about the fact that someone tried to...
Dad, stop jerking it. I'm bringing a client home.
Bringing the dean home.
Right.
And then as she's walking to the car, she hears... It's weirdly smoky, but only at the bottom.
Yeah, I put like... The fog machine is very apparent.
Uh-huh. And we hear noises and we're like, someone's following her, but she makes it to her car safely.
Yeah. Why you're walking alone again, as she does multiple times. Well, no, just in this part. Other times it's like at her place of work and things like that. Where it's like, why are you alone?
Mm-hmm. Well, and especially if she's bringing the dean home.
Yeah. Hey, Dean, let's walk to our cars.
Yeah, will you drive me over to my car? Because I'm being followed because I looked into this last case for you.
Mm-hmm. Hey, you know those like the string of salts and like shaved heads that are happening at on your campus. Yeah, like almost happened to me. So maybe we should like work out a system for me getting to my car safely.
But so they get to the car. She gets to the car. She hangs up the phone too, like while it's happening. And I'm like, stay on the phone with your dad, you idiot.
Yeah. Yep.
Sorry, Veronica. I just have some heated feels.
No. Yeah. No.
So then they go to the house and the dean's telling her dad that I think Thelma was abducted because she was talking to the waitress and then she was gone. And we're like, oh, she was talking to the waitress.
Mm-hmm.
So then Keith is like, Veronica, will you look into who that server was? And she's like, of course, I'd love to, Father. Fighting crime is our family game.
Any crime by dinner time.
Exactly. Like Olsen and Olsen Mystery Agency. Good times. I loved that.
Mm-hmm.
I wonder if that's streaming anywhere. I feel like
it's probably like Wishbone, right? Where you found it on YouTube.
Yeah, and I doubt it holds up. I mean, I guess how could it not hold up?
Didn't we watch one on YouTube not too long ago where they're at SeaWorld?
Oh, yeah. I showed you some of the clips from it because I really, truly loved that.
Yeah.
That was a classic of mine.
Yeah, her parents were SeaWorld trainers, I believe.
Yeah, I think that was like the whole thing. It was like they were like walking around in SeaWorld.
Cool.
But it's just like Veronica near San Diego.
Exactly. Yeah.
So Veronica talks to the supervisor at the like wherever the venue was.
Yeah, real Law and Order vibes here.
Mm-hmm.
She can't stop to talk to Veronica. She's got to continue doing her job.
Yeah, I've never understood that.
Mm-hmm.
That's not how things work.
Yeah. Oh, I don't know. Yeah. I got catering to do.
Exactly.
I don't care if someone went missing.
So she talks to the supervisor. Veronica finds out that there's only one waitress that works there. Everyone else is a waiter, which is very binary.
Pretty rough.
And then we find out that waitress was Fern, our friend from the Lilith Society.
I think something like that.
She said that Selma had a call from a woman in the kitchen, and so she had told her, and she went to go answer it. This is where I started writing Selma. Let's see if I stuck with it.
Okay.
My guess, no.
No.
But we don't know. You know, sometimes I'm consistent. So then Keith goes to go talk to the family. Selma's husband, Mr. Rose, is the dad from the nanny.
Yes.
He's in a wheelchair. He's got a PA. His PA's name is Brett.
Brant.
Brant?
Brant.
I wrote down Brett.
Well, don't know what to tell you.
What is happening?
Well, yeah. Yeah. So I wrote down kind of when we're going around the Rose estate and we get Brant being the, stuck up.
Who?
Brent.
Brett.
Brett?
That's
Brett.
what I wrote, Brett.
Okay. Being stuck up and not wanting to see the master of the house, and then, oh my God, I lost his name.
Mr. Rose?
Yes. Like being in a wheelchair. I'm like, this is all really reminding me of the Big Lebowski, especially with like the missing wife. And Brant is literally the name of Philip Seymour Hoffman's character in Big Lebowski. And I think the rest of the episode is very Big Lebowski-esque, of like people not actually being missing and going on a goose chase and stuff of like detective work, until the end. And we'll get there.
I wonder why they then called it Lord of the Pies. You'd think they would have alluded towards the other. But anyway, so...
I could be, this could be completely coincidental. I could be bringing a lot to it myself.
Subliminals, you don't know.
Exactly. When I see the parallels, call them out, but it could have been just, we've had Big Lebowski references in the show before.
There you go. So then Keith is like, yeah, what can you tell me about your wife? And he's like, well, she fights with the board all the time. She's got her own opinions and all of that. He's like, I'll have Brant give you her brother's number who's coming into town because he might, know something or have some information.
Yeah.
And then Keith leaves. He's being walked out by Brandt, and he sees the back of a car, and he's like, whose car is that? And he's like, Brandt's like, oh, it's the dog walker's. I hate her. And you're like, interesting.
It's got a Hearst College bumper sticker on the back.
Mm-hmm.
And also Selma's brother, or Thelma's brother, whoever, is coming over to take over the business.
Yes, because she's not there.
Mm-hmm.
So then Sheriff Lamb gets a phone call from Martha Vasquez from the news.
I did remember this part, and I do like this part.
Mm-hmm. She's calling to get some details about this missing persons case because they're going to talk about it on the news. And, she's just really tooting Sheriff Lamb's horn.
Totally. And before the call, like a creep, looks up her picture on Google search and then, like, leaves it up while he, like, gets, like, excited and, like, tries to put on his, like, best voice.
Mm-hmm. We call that peacocking.
Yep. Peacocking on the phone is even better.
So we find out pretty quickly that it's Veronica pretending to be Martha Vasquez because Keith picks up the phone and ruins the call.
Yeah, but even better, she's Veronica just goes like, "Dad, I'm on the phone," and then tries to segue back into it. Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's great. Then Veronica walks up to Dick in the cafeteria, and she's like, "Hey, Dick. I heard the Pysegs are still doing their sex competition, their sex quest, if you will." She's like, not only did Chip get shaved, but don't you think that's a bad idea?
Yeah.
And he's like, I don't know. And then he's like, what's even worse is not only did he get shaved, but they stuck a plastic Easter egg with Roman numerals in it up his butt.
Yep. Sucks to suck, Chip.
But also, like, I don't want to dig into, like, how that would work because, like, I don't want to.
No.
But most of plastic Easter eggs aren't very sturdy. So, like, I don't, like, the force at which to get it up a butt, I feel like it would open.
Yeah, probably, or, like, break.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
You'd have to buy some really nice plastic Easter eggs for it to be fully intact.
I don't think they cared.
But it's fully intact when they find it later.
Oh, yeah, when they pull it out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I think they got lucky. Or Chip got lucky, I should say.
And there's Roman numerals on it. So then Veronica's like, hey, can we find out what those are? And Dick is like, you got some weird kinks, Veronica. So then,
like, no one asked your opinion, Dick.
Veronica follows up with Fern about this whole, hey, you saw the person who went missing last. And Veronica's like, hey, when I talked to the sheriff pretending to be Martina Vasquez, he let it slip that they looked into the call and there was no incoming call. And then our friend Fern is like, well, maybe it came from inside the college, so it didn't show up as an incoming call because it's a transfer. And so she's like, the call came from inside the house. Then she goes over to Pysegs and they go through the trash, and the homeless man who goes through their trash finds the Easter egg for her, and she can now look at the Roman numerals. But before she does, we talk to the brother of Selma. And he tells Keith that their stock goes up every day that Selma's missing because she's a humanitarian. She's done a lot of humanitarian work, and she doesn't want their products made in China. She wants them made in the US. And it's more expensive to not make things in other countries.
Yep. So, she does the right thing for the more expensive cost.
And so he's like, well, she loves to be a humanitarian, and she loves her dogs, so, like, I'm sure she'll be back eventually because her dogs are here.
Yep.
And we're like, she loves her dogs.
And also it's like, oh yeah, and her and her husband were, like, on the rocks. They were planning on getting a divorce.
Yep. So then Veronica and Wallace are at the cafeteria, and she's like, hey, buddy old pal, Mr. Math, help me do these Roman numerals.
Yep. Can you add these?
And she looks into them. She finds out that the Roman numerals are 111 and 903.
Yeah, 2 away.
Wallace says he's never going on another Easter egg hunt again. And I say probably. So I agree with you. And then she's like, Wallace, what could these numbers mean? And he's like, is it a student ID number? A driver's license? No, you know what it is, my friends? It's a date.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how she knew which order to put them in. I guess because maybe that's how they were written on it next to each other.
Yeah, so she went in that way.
Mm-hmm. And it's November 19th, 2003. Great day. I don't remember that day, do you?
No, not at all.
I would have been 10.
I would have been 11.
Wow.
Zing.
Yeah, I don't know what I was doing yet.
Probably went to school and hung out with my friends.
Yeah.
Learned.
What were you learning at that point?
God knows. Maybe about my body. Was that 5th grade?
For you?
Or would that have been 4th grade? 5th grade.
5th grade.
Yeah. So probably learned about I wouldn't have been learning about my body yet because that was the end of 5th grade.
Mm-hmm.
So I have no idea what I was learning.
Didn't
maybe holes. Maybe we were reading holes.
Oh God, I hated that book.
That could have been. I think that was 5th grade.
Dig 'em up them holes.
Dig 'em. Holes.
When his name was Stanley Yellnuts, I knew it was not a book for me.
Oh, it's fan. Yeah.
I was like, that's not funny. Like, I was just a little kid who was just like an 80-year-old woman who was just
but
like,
it's
what
backwards.
Yeah, it's exactly. Like, whoop do you fucking do? I can write things backwards too. Why is this person a critically acclaimed author?
Who eats onions? Raw.
Bite into them.
Yeah, nasty. I know they're sweet onions or whatever, but yeah. Anyways,
tune into our Holes podcast.
Exactly. We are rereading Holes. We're going chapter by chapter.
I would die.
Yep.
I remember.
I'm really excited about this one because Zero's introduced, and I really like Zero.
I remember thinking that like it didn't make any sense. Like I was like, this isn't something that happens to like people.
We did do a podcast on camps that abuse kids. So,
exactly. Exactly. But as a kid at the time, reading that at age 10, I was like, this is not reality.
So maybe you should give it another shot then. Maybe we should get our Holes podcast off the ground.
Well, and what were the weird...
the Caveman Chronicles.
What were the weird creatures?
Yellow spotted lizards, something like that.
Yeah, yellow bellied lizards or something.
Or were they iguanas? It was some sort of.
But they were like toxic, and I was like, this doesn't make any sense.
But then if you eat the onion, and
they won't bite you because they.
Oh, that's what it was.
Yeah.
Because your breath smells so fucking bad.
Because you smell.
Yep.
I'm not sure if that's accurate. Yep. If you've read
Holes
Holes recently, please send us an email.
Exactly. Or watch the movie with Sigourney Weaver and Shia LaBeouf.
I remember hating the movie.
I remember being like, this is okay. And really remembering the rap.
It does not surprise me.
Yep. Check out the tag. My name is Caveman. Remember that part.
Oh my God. Well, we'll get right back on that. But first, we're gonna go to the library. We're gonna look into what happened on November 19th, 2003 at Hearst College, because that day a Theta Beta pledge fell off a sorority house roof.
Yep. Patrice Petrelli.
We weren't allowed on our roofs.
I don't think they were allowed either.
But they were tanning on the roof. Remember, it was like a thing that they like went up there and tanned, and like they had a banister and stuff. Like it sounded like they had like roof access.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like our roof was on a slant.
Right. So they probably had like a patio.
Mm-hmm. That's what I assumed. I don't know though. Then Veronica hears a noise. She runs and hides in the library because she's in there at night late because she works for them. And it was just the maintenance man mopping. But I too get frightened by people who operate in the dark in a dark space when I'm in the dark. It seems bad in all fronts. Why is he mopping in the dark?
Probably that he's probably just like mopping. Like, I don't know. It seemed like there was light.
Okay. It didn't really seem like there was light.
Operates in the dark.
Well, I was like, who?
Who operates in the dark? Patman janitors.
That's what I mean. Like, I've never seen a janitor not turn on the lights while they're cleaning.
I believe it was like dim, but there was light.
Okay. Um, regardless, it's obviously not the janitor's fault. I was just simply
No.
wondering. uh, so they run the plates for who the dog walker is with the Hearst College sticker, and it is Holly from Theta Beta.
Hallie.
Hallie. So Veronica goes up to Hallie while she's tanning on campus in that place where Wallace and Piz stood and stared at girls.
Yep.
Their first day.
They're somewhere in the background with binoculars now.
You'd think they just walk up to people at this point because they probably
They're
know
still trying to play
some.
hacky sack. Well, Wallace is, and Piz is not reciprocating.
And then Veronica goes, Hallie, aren't you worried about your missing boss? And like basically insinuates like, do you know what's going on? And Hallie's like, I'm her dog walker. I did not do anything. But Brandt is creepy, and I think he's in love with his boss. And
which, maybe.
Veronica's like, okay, then what do you know about Patrice, the girl who fell off the Theta Beta roof before you went here? And she's like, oh, she just had one too many hard lemonades and she fell off the roof.
And then does the thing of like,
she may have said foul play, but
right,
it's a lie.
where you divulge too much information by like yelling like, no, those rumors aren't true. Okay, what rumors?
And then I wrote down a note that about the 10-year anniversary coming up for Selma and Hallie, and that Selma loves her dogs.
Yes. So, a couple things here. Keith and Veronica meet up, and they're like, we both have juicy information. Keith is like, hey, Selma's brother is going to be putting in these shady business practices. Woo! And Veronica is like, hey, guess what? Hallie spilled all the beans. And then they both commiserate, figure out that it's going to be their 10th anniversary. And they're like, oh my God. Keith is like, have I taught you nothing? What do we call a 10th anniversary? And it's a dine and dash, meaning that I'm assuming like some sort of prenup's up with like marriages. I didn't quite follow the logic on this one. If you have any idea of like why waiting 10 years to divorce is like better. Maybe that means you've accumulated more things that are more entitled to like some of the money of your partner.
Well, I'm wondering too if there's something about like the prenups and the way they're signed. Like if it's like, okay, and then after a decade you kind of like dissolves, or I don't know.
Maybe that was it. The prenup is dissolved at that point. I think people actually, now that I remember reaching back in my brain, people were thinking at the time that's what Kobe's wife might do because of the allegations against him in early 2000s. That like as it was approaching the 10th, like after like the 10th anniversary, that she was gonna like divorce him. But obviously that never happened.
Yeah.
And so then they both realize the 10th anniversary is coming up, and it's like, oh, the husband could be trying to hide her away because they were trying to, they're going to divorce. So just stay out of the way until the 10th anniversary. But, they don't know the reason why. So they're going to go check at the Rose estate.
Because they're like, where would you hide her? Where she's quiet? Oh, with her dogs that she loves.
And they go to the Rose estate, and there she is in the pool house with her dogs.
I mean, honestly, same.
Yeah. I was like, oh, chill. Like, this is great. Not missing. Interesting. So, they talk to her, and it's like, well, what are you doing out of the way? It's like, well, I'm being blackmailed. And it's like, oh, so why would you be being blackmailed? You've probably lived an upstanding life. And it's like, well,
I made out with Hallie once.
Yes. I have a thing for our dog walker. And it's like, well, shit. And so it's like, well, you're also being hidden away so your brother can be instituting some like shady business practices, and then your husband will make all sorts of money when you divorce him and stuff. It's like, fuck. Okay. And yeah, all that shit is gross.
So then they make a plan. Then Veronica's in the cafeteria. A fight breaks out. She goes to break it up with her taser. She got taser.
Yep. Oh, yeah.
And a big man picks her up and carries her out of the room. And then he's like, "Don't worry, I'm not hurting you, Veronica. I was hired by Logan to protect you."
Yeah. I'm not going to help. I'm going to hire a man to stalk you and then jump in.
Yeah, which is like, why doesn't he just stalk her?
Yes.
Anyway.
Why doesn't he? We talked about this. If he was, he's got a lot of growing up to do. He's got a lot of shit going on. This is the season where Logan is getting hit in the face with like PTSD and emotional trauma. So it's, hard for him to not just nosedive this season. But, it next time, be like, hey, how can I help?
Mm-hmm. So then we cut over to Hallie. She's driving. She gets pulled over by Sheriff Lamb.
Yes.
She's like, "Ha ha ha,
Because
officer."
the homeless man reported and said he saw Selma leaving the party with Hallie.
Hallie.
Oh, and apparently, so according to my notes going back here, I didn't remember this, but we'd figured out that Hallie was actually sleeping with Selma on behalf of her husband.
She was actually having an affair with the husband,
Yes.
and the photos he intentionally had her kiss her or whatever.
Yeah. Seduce Selma, yeah.
To get photos to blackmail her with. And there were love letters from the husband to Hallie in her car.
Yep.
So anyway, before we get into the car, Veronica comes in to yell at Logan because she's like, "You had me followed. I thought I was being murdered." And he's like, "I love you." And she's like, "I love you too."
Yeah, and he's like, shouldn't we be like easier on each other? And I forget what the reason, he gives a reason to her of like,
he's like,
well,
"You're going to be you and you're going to do these things and I want to protect you and this is one way that I can."
oh, no, so it's like you can't, like, this is how I am. You can't like change. And he's like, well, I've been telling you the same thing and yet you expect me to change.
Mm-hmm.
And it's like, but you haven't been telling her that you've been partying and burnt a motel down. These are not the same.
Yeah, it's a messy one.
Yeah.
So then we go into Hallie's car, love letters from the husband to Hallie. He goes to jail. So then Keith asks him, was Roger in on it? Or no, she asked him, right? Selma was like, was Roger in on it? Or did you just expect him to do the worst thing because my brother's awful?
Yeah, because Lamb then goes and busts Bud.
Mm-hmm.
And so when Bud is in lockup, Selma goes and greets him with divorce papers and asks about her brother.
Mm-hmm. And then she goes to go vote. She talks to the dean. She's like, "Oh, I'm voting against the Greeks." Because she's the swing vote.
Yep, new swing vote on the board.
Hallie, on the other hand, was like, "I love Bud. I'm not a gold digger. I say what you want," because Veronica sees her on campus. She's like, "That's not what it was about." And Veronica's like, "Tell me about Patrice." And Hallie's like, "Oh, she was friends with Claire. So if you want more information, you should probably find Claire."
Before we jump to Claire, I did want to briefly touch on how Hallie is viewed in this episode, not as someone who is taken advantage of, and used, but as like
an instigator.
Exactly. That same thing of like that trope that we've seen before in the show of like that like gold digger. Women are just like out to get money, and like that she's as much culpable as these adults that were like manipulating her to do things, and also the giant power and age gap in between her and Bud is never like talked about. It's like that she's just as bad as the adult that is manipulating her.
Yeah, using her.
Yep. And the gross power dynamics there.
Yeah, it's really gross. Well, and this is where the plot gets gross too.
Yes.
The plot takes a turn for the fucking worst right here.
So that's why I wanted to like at least say the piece on Hallie before we
move into the rest.
Yep.
So Veronica goes to find Claire. And the other women that we know, such as Fern and the woman who was the director of the newspaper, are there. They tell her that Patrice was hazed by the Pysigs, that they would do this thing where they were like in a dark basement and they would like circle like the parts on people's bodies that needed to get fixed, but only on certain people. And you heard about awful things like this in Greek life, but like
Yeah.
I personally never witnessed it. That does not mean it does not happen. I know it happens, but people knew better than to haze me. I'd rat those motherfuckers out.
Fuck them up.
Oh, you all want to fight? Smallest girl in my pledge class. I'm from the Central Valley. I don't give a fuck.
Coming for you.
And when the Pysigs hazed her, they wrote on her when they circled the parts on her body that were quote unquote problematic. They did it in permanent marker.
Yeah.
Which then and they started calling her a marshmallow because she was really pale, and they decided that she did not have an ideal body type.
Totally. And they did have that like two-way mirror that they mentioned before where they turn on the lights and like there's like the Pysigs and the Thetas like all fucking laughing together.
And so they tried to convince her to get a spray tan to cover it up and like do all these things, and she one day came up to the roof and they thought she was going to tan with the rest of them that were on the roof, and apparently she walked off the roof. And so Veronica's like, that's a fucking awful story, like horrible that happened to Patrice, which I'm like, okay, we're validating, we're on a good path. We are on a great path, like, okay, this totally checks out, like what a fucking awful like thing. And then Veronica's like, powerful motivation to fake a rape, and that's when the Emily screamed.
Yep.
Even though I knew this was coming.
Yeah.
It makes me angry.
She's
like, Veronica does say, as she calls them out on this, nothing hurts the cause more than fake rapes, which is true, but that's not true because there are never fake rapes.
It would, yeah. So it's not even something to entertain.
Exactly. I know a significant amount of people that have been sexually assaulted. I don't know anyone who has faked a rape. And even when you're not going off of personal experience, like it's not common.
Yeah. And it's not ever worth it in the way that things like this portrayed as being, that there's some sort of like outcome that is like good enough for some person to like risk their neck or whatever their life is to go out on a limb and say that fake a rape that someone had like totally had raped, like said they did, but they didn't. And
to do it to other people.
Right. Exactly.
Because you have to think of people like Parker who think they've been raped.
Yeah. Well, so I think that's where it gets messy too. Is like how many of them were. So is Parker was still, I think canonically in the show, it seems like Parker was actually sexually assaulted. So it's even worse that saying this is happening on campus and you three women think it's a good idea to co-opt it as this thing to try and like get back against like Greek, and it's like, and it's all your fault. But that isn't a thing that happens.
Yeah.
And
well, to copycat it off of then if we are, I don't remember how this ends. So like if we are saying that, yeah, because there was the whole thing that Veronica heard them in there. I forgot about that. So like, okay, if Parker's did happen and she was sexually assaulted, then to then copycat that, and there was the girl in the last season that was at the end of the season that
Veronica.
And Veronica. Well, but yeah, it's so then it's like, okay, like are any of these them faking it? Like are they attacking other people?
I don't think that's what they're getting at here.
It's just specifically Claire's.
Exactly. That Claire did. And that it was this whole thing that they were then co-opting, is how I read that, which is bad, and is also insinuating
the whole thing's fucking off. I mean, like, regardless of which scenario that it plays out, it's bad.
Yeah, and I think that the show's read on it then is assuming that sexual assaults are taken seriously by police, which is complete fiction.
Yeah, the most accurate scene in this season was when Sheriff Lamb was like, "Oh, what were you wearing? What were you doing?" Because like that's unfortunately how these things are portrayed.
Totally, and this takes away all of that, and also undercuts a wider problem on college campuses of sexual assault.
And it undercuts feminist movements because these women are being portrayed as like the feminists in the show, and then they're the ones faking the rape, and it's like that's not what that looks like.
No, it isn't, and that it also promotes that people should be skeptical of sexual assault
victims, and it's like no, they're it's so fucked up.
Yeah.
Believe victims of sexual assault.
Exactly. The last thing you should be doing is questioning if like it happened, but that's exactly what happens. We see that every single time something happens, like Dr. Ford. Yeah, or even in the case of like that person that accused Joe Biden of like sexual assault, it all the way down the board. It's just like, well, what were they doing? What was happening? Does this constitute that? Is this even real? Are they just trying to get attention? No matter what the case is. So.
It is interesting too in this episode because they had called out, I think it was on the last one, the TA is like, oh yeah, and there was no DNA on any of the, so then it's like, okay, like how is this, it's stupid. I hate this plot.
Yeah, no, I think this is probably the worst episode of Veronica Mars. At least it's the most reprehensible. Because I think also the resolution of the Selma Rose plot is gross. On top of this gross bombshell at the end. So I would think in my estimation, this is like probably the worst one we've watched.
I don't know if I could rank them as the worst because certain ones just have certain moments where you're just like, this is so fucking, like the whole Beaver plot is so fucked up.
Yeah.
And the whole adding the Beaver sexual assault to Veronica is, that to me is just like a waste of a season.
Yeah, totally.
I think sexual assault isn't necessarily a plot point, and it shouldn't be. Like, that should not be what you based your show that's about a girl who's a detective around.
Yeah. If you're not going to explore what it's like to live with it, which is they're not interested in.
Yes. If you're a woman, to have a show created by a man be so focused on the sexual assault of women is a little strange to me.
Exactly. It's very exploitative.
So then we wrap up the episode with Veronica getting a call from Logan in the food court, and she ignores it, and he watches her ignore it from the other side of the food court, and he knows that deep down inside, even though she said she loved him too and that they were fine, that maybe they are not fine. And you know what I yelled when this happened?
What?
Why don't you walk over there? Hey, I just called you, but I just saw, I just saw you, so hi.
I'm in the corner.
Watching you eat your cheeseburger? Like, that's just fucking weird.
Yeah.
Hi, it's cool if you don't want to talk. I just want to sit quietly near you.
Yep, crying in the corner.
He's also
he's not there yet.
But also
communication.
Sometimes they have like Veronica like miss things like this, and I'm like, there's no way a girl that is like that focused on like what's happening around her and like looking into things like would miss this.
No.
You don't get an FBI internship and not
notice your boyfriend over in the corner on the phone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that is that.
Yep. Real fucking stinker anyway you slice it.
And not enough Piz, not enough Wallace.
No, nary a sign of them. And Mac is still in Bakersfield or wherever the fuck she got shipped off to.
Yeah, I don't understand that one either.
Yeah, maybe she's more in the back half, but like through 8 episodes, only having her.
I feel like I remember her being in more.
Exactly, so that's why I'm like, oh no, okay, she's not showing up again. Well, all right. Yeah. Rough. Did not like.
No. Shall we plug?
Yep.
When we're not complaining about Veronica Mars, which is what I feel like season 3 is becoming, and it's
Yeah. Well,
not our fault.
and season 2 a little bit.
You can find me over at butreallythough.com. That was spelled THO. I am a life and career coach. I help people get their shit together. We have fun along the way. And we try to make shit happen for you. We adapt to things, especially like 2020 and in general. And I offer free discovery calls, so you can sign up for one on my website. I also have an Instagram that I post some of my career coaching content and link everything to. It is But Really Though, BTRLYTHO. And we have another podcast that Brenton mentioned earlier in the episode called But Really Though. It's a podcast where we just talk about shit that interests us, and we've done things from like, a little bit about UFOs, conspiracy theories, stuff we didn't learn in history. Sometimes like some sciencey stuff, or like we might look into some cult stuff, it really just depends. Cult and occult. So actually both.
Yeah.
And it's a whole lot of fun. You can stream that podcast wherever you stream this podcast. And that was spelled THO, just like my website.
Yeah. And you can find this podcast on Twitter and Facebook at Mars Rewatch. Yeah, I was like, oh crap, what was I talking about? And you can also send us an email at marsrewatch@gmail.com. I am also on Twitter at PyleBrenton. That's PyleBrenton. And then you can also watch our new Let's Play. If you like video games and you like tactical turn-based RPGs, we are playing Mutant Year Zero. That's over on my YouTube channel, Burger Discourse.
All right. Stay toasted, marshmallows.